One of the central propositions of systems change is that we should not change a system without first gaining a deep understanding of its overall structure and workings. A narrow analytical and partial vision will lead at best to partial results. If we want to achieve something more than this, then we will need a more holistic vision of the system. It is only from a more comprehensive view of what we are dealing with that we can hope to achieve a more comprehensive and complete result. This requires trying to understand the overall structure, features, and dynamics of the system. The reason our initiatives often fail is that we take a partial approach, based upon a partial understanding of the system. We think that cybersecurity is about computers and code, and then spend millions in securing the information system itself without properly accounting for the people, their motives, behavior, and habits. We think that education is all about what happens in the classroom, when it is as much about the many other dimensions to the student's life as what happens in school. To avoid these common pitfalls, we need to grasp the multidimensional nature of complex organizations and map this out as best we can. If we want to be successful in our systems change efforts, we need to be aware of all the different dimensions to the systems we are dealing with. Too often, our endeavors fail because we try to reduce the whole system to one dimension so as to simplify things. Systems change involves working on many different levels and across many different domains. As the Academy for Systems Change notes, system change involves deep shifts in mental models, relationships, and taken-for-granted ways of operating, as much as it involves shifts in organizational roles and formal structures, metrics and performance management, and goals and policies. We are trying to get a vision for what elements, relations, and networks are regulating the state of the system, and these take many forms. On the most basic level, what regulates and coordinates us as individuals and organizations is our physical environment. The physical layout of an office, the structure of a building, a city, or a transport system regulates and coordinates human behavior in sometimes subtle ways. Often like a fish in water, we take it for granted. We form part of organizations of various kinds, from our cultures and societies to families, businesses, nations, or sports clubs. These organizations engender rules, incentives, and power dynamics that shape how people behave, what gets said or not said, who gets to do what happens and what does not happen. Every day, we and millions or billions of others get out of bed and recreate our societal and organizational patterns. These patterns are largely a function of the rules, incentives, and power dynamics of our institutional structures. To do systems change, we are going to have some understanding of these and map them out to make them explicit. Beyond this, how systems operate and people act to create emergent outcomes is a function of the way they see the world and the mental models that we share as organizations and societies. These models often go unnoticed as they are part of our culture, being imbued with them from a young age. By surfacing these mental models, we can see how we collectively create outcomes by the way we see the world, and by changing those models, we can create different outcomes. Systems thinking engenders a deep reflexivity about the models that we hold and how they work to create the world around us. Part of a systems thinking approach is to surface those and make them explicit. Ultimately, what shapes human behavior and outcomes are our values. Values subtly shape and guide us by telling us which way is up and which way is down. Even if our values are apparent to us, they may not be apparent to others. Making them explicit is a part of creating a shared understanding of the system we form part of. Mapping out the value system surfaces alignments or misalignments of values, which can help us to be aware of where possible points of conflict or collaboration may arise. The different dimensions of scale are likewise hugely important. We need to be able to look at the system from the smallest level to the largest. Systems change all the time, on all different levels. Therefore, systems change happens on all scales, from the smallest little action to processes that take place across the whole global economy and biosphere. We would not be doing systems thinking if we did not try to account for those many different levels. The smallest of levels might represent something like the way a person turns on their computer or uses their toothbrush. The broadest levels spans up to centuries and even millennia-long processes of change within civilization itself. For example, the process of globalization or the information revolution. We shouldn't shy away from either the big or the small. Both are equally important. Without a view of both, we create potential stumbling blocks, while with a vision of the different levels, we avoid getting trapped on one level. We can learn how to leverage and use those different processes of change that are underway on the different levels to our advantage. If our vision is too broad, only focused on the macro, we can stumble by creating devils in the details. An over-focus on the details without a view for the macro increases the likelihood that our efforts will be overridden at some point by those macro trends. By understanding broader processes of change, we can align our initiatives with them, mitigating that risk and leveraging their driving force, while at the same time keeping an eye on the details to engage the local, the personal, the particular, or specific as an advantage. If we do not think of these different levels, then we will not be able to harness the potential of the change happening on those different levels, and we will likely get stuck, because we are just looking at change on one level. Unfortunately, most people get stuck on one level. But to be a successful systems changer requires you being able to move through the different levels, zooming in and out to see both the trees and forest, and the different emergent levels in between.